Laura Coleman here from Be Modern Meditation, and it's 5:15 on, I have to get this every day, Wednesday. I believe it's Wednesday today, and I'm coming to you live today from the garden where my husband has started a bonfire. Now, we have quite a troubled history with bonfires. Hi Victoria, how are you? We have quite a troubled history with bonfires in this family because last year we had a bonfire, and I don't know if you'll be able to see in this video. Hang on, I'll see if you can see right at the back over there. There's a hole in the fence, and that is from a bonfire that travelled underneath years and years of grass cuttings and popped out at the end and set fire to the fence. And on the other side of that fence is this huge, and you can actually see it from Google Maps, there's this huge orchard of trees. I don't know if it's an orchard really. Basically, Lloyd George's grandson owns this land next door to us, and there's one of every single tree in England in the shape of a Union Jack in this plot right behind this fence. So last summer, when it was really dry, my husband decided to have this bonfire. Not dissimilar to this one, although I have had a little inspect and I think it's fairly safe. But basically, we had a phone call from a neighbour, and she said, "Laura, is there a fire?" And I said, "Oh yes, it was a bonfire," and we checked it had all gone out. And then she was like, "Only I can hear the fence panels." So we race out, and basically the fire had literally travelled. It was out, but it travelled underneath, popped out at the end and set fire to this fence. And so there was my husband and the neighbour chucking buckets. We had to get the fire engine, and it literally had just popped through to the other side of that fence, and we caught it just in time. Hi Leela. And Leela's local. Leela, I was just explaining how last year we nearly set fire to, and I don't know if I can see through the fence post there, a bonfire gone wrong. That basically we caught it just before it set fire to Lloyd George's grandson's trees, which are in the shape of a Union Jack. So that was our kind of, was it last summer or the summer before? Anyway, so now my husband does a bonfire, I come, and I am very, very cautious about what he's done. So yeah, I'm out here inspecting his handiwork today as we do this, and I wanted to talk about thinking today because I've been talking to a number of people over the last couple of days, and I've had a couple of client sessions one-to-one on Zoom, which works surprisingly well actually. And one of the things that's been coming up for people, particularly in yeah, Lilo, I know, right? Oh, middle of the night meditation for Nikki, over in Australia. Good to see you, Nikki. Hi, Helen. Yeah, no wind. I don't want you to bring any wind tonight, Helen, by the way, because I don't want that bonfire getting out of control again. So anyway, so I've been talking to clients, and one of the things that's been coming up is their thoughts, getting carried away with thoughts. Their thoughts, either they're in self-isolation on their own, and there's that too much. Hi, Kath. There's too much thinking. They're stuck in their own head for too much of the time, and when that happens and we get in this ruminating cycle where our thoughts just go round and round and things become much bigger, or they are stuck, they're at home and suddenly everyone's at home and there's a sense of no space, and it's difficult to find space to think. And what tends to happen is that we end up with this quite self-critical voice that kicks in with, "You're not doing this well enough, you're rubbish, you can't do this," or "I can't cope, this is too hard," or we try and stuff that down and not let ourselves think about how we're feeling. And one of the things that meditation can be really powerful for is changing your relationship to your thoughts so that they have less power to yank you around and less power to impact your quality of life. Because actually our thinking, when it gets into that spiral, it can really change how much joy we can find in our lives. So the technique that we'll use today, it's similar to, there's lots of different ways actually that I teach to change that relationship to your thoughts. There's a few different sort of techniques, and we'll try those over the coming weeks. But today we're going to do something quite simple where we're really going to be cultivating a space between there's me, this being me, this part of me that's unchanging, and then there's everything else, and my thoughts are just another thing in that. So there's my body, there's the things that happen in my life, there's the doing basically, and thoughts just become another thing to notice and let pass through. And we've used a couple of times in these meditations if you've joined before, we've used a technique of labeling where we label things. And don't worry, I'm going to guide you through things. But we do it as a way to create that space, that sense that there's me and then there's the things that are happening. And that space is our magic power. Viktor Frankl, there's a quote from Viktor Frankl, who is a psychologist in the Holocaust, and he became fascinated about why some people's experience is so different. You know, that some people can get through those situations and some can't. And he talks about, there's a quote that I love, and I'll try and remember it. He says that between the stimulus and the response, there's a space, and in that space lies our power and our freedom. And that's the space that we create in meditation. That's what, when we do this every night, even just this little bit we've been doing, we're creating that space, and it's really powerful. We can see things more clearly, and we have more space to choose our response rather than just being yanked around by whatever our thoughts tell us we should think. So we'll start, as always, with the body and the breath as that way in, because it's only, our body can only ever be right now. You know, as soon as I'm not thinking about my body, I'm lost in the past or the future, and I can tell. So we use the body as that anchor point. And then we'll open out and just allow things to come up. And when they do, we'll use this labeling technique, which I'll guide you through, in order to create space. And and with any meditation, I would just encourage you to see it almost like an experiment and just be curious. You know, what am I experiencing today in this moment as I do this? Even if you've tried this before, you've done meditations before, you've done these evening meditations before, just be curious. What is it like today? And for those of you who are doing this for the first time, there's a couple of things to bear in mind. Now, the first of those, on the subject of thoughts, is that you are unlikely, unless you are, well, I don't know what you'd have to be, you will have thoughts. So there's a myth that meditation means emptying your mind. It doesn't. It just means being with whatever arises and changing the way that you respond to it. So you get to choose. So when things come up, when thoughts come up, your only job in the meditation is to notice. Notice that you've been distracted without judging it, or without using lots of effort and control, and just come back to whatever it is that we're focusing on in that moment. And that's it. That is the practice, and that is what trains your mind. So you may feel moments of feeling really relaxed and still and calm, but you might not. You might also become aware of the noise in your mind, and that's okay too. That's just as useful. Just like a workout at the gym can feel horrific and you're still building a muscle, but you are switching on the relaxation response even if it doesn't feel relaxing. So just bear that in mind and free yourself from any expectations. There's no pass or fail. And then the second thing relates to posture, and you have heard me say this before if you've been before, but we're trying to find that middle ground between super relaxed, where we're kind of almost lying down, falling asleep. In this type of meditation, we're not doing that, although somebody has mentioned to me, Nikki has mentioned to me, that I will do a sleeping meditation to get you to sleep one night, but that's for another day. So we don't want to be too relaxed, but we also don't want to be too rigid and holding ourselves up either. So we're just going for that middle ground between, so that we're active but relaxed. So having your lower back supported, and just your posture just relaxed. No effort, no trying, and if you can, try not to have your head resting back on anything, because that stops you from falling into sleep. So even if, particularly if you are going on adrenaline a lot, you might find that, you know, your head's a bit nodding dog, maybe a bit drool, because you'll actually experience the tiredness that's in your system potentially. That again doesn't mean that the meditation's not working. So if that happens, just notice, just as with the thoughts, just notice and come back. And that's about as technical as it gets. There's nothing special to master, and I'll guide you through, and be curious and see what happens. So closing down the eyes now, allowing yourself to be in this moment right now. Finding that stillness in your body, wherever you are today, just opening up to the sounds around you. Noticing what you can hear. Perhaps you can hear sounds in the room, sounds beyond the room, maybe the household sounds, or outside. Maybe the sounds of where I am tonight. And just becoming aware of that sound coming to you. And there might be an awareness of other things too, like sensations or thoughts. And that's okay as well. And now we'll turn our attention inwards, bringing the awareness now, that attention, to land really gently on the fingertips, letting your full focus rest there. And if your mind gets distracted, just coming back to just at the very tips of the fingers. And you might notice after a moment or two, there's a gentle tingling or vibration in the fingers, like a gentle humming or buzzing. That's your nervous system responding to you turning inwards, your fingers preparing for movement, the mind and the body coming together moment by moment. And if you don't feel that, that's okay too. Just be aware of whatever sensations are there, bringing your attention back any time that it gets distracted. And then seeing if you can add your toes to your awareness now. So your fingers and your toes are in your awareness. Just noticing if you can feel any sensations there. The very tips of the toes. Perhaps you feel it more in your fingers. Or maybe even more on one side than the other. And notice that when your mind gets distracted, you lose that sensation, if you found that sensation there. So it becomes a way to recognize, to notice. And remembering that's your only job in the meditation, is to notice, moment by moment, what you're experiencing. Whatever it's like inside your mind tonight. And your body and around you. And seeing if you can allow your awareness now to travel up the legs. So the ankles, the shins, up to the knees. And from the knees travelling along the thighs, into the hips. Then the legs feel heavy now, or light. You're just becoming aware of what sensations you feel. Maybe you could even be aware of the feel of the clothes against your skin, the chair or the ground beneath you. And then from the hands travelling up the wrists and the forearms, up to the tops of the arms, to the shoulders, across the chest, down into the belly. Your whole body in your awareness now. And coming back, bringing your attention back, like training a puppy. You just endlessly come back. Perhaps noticing the tongue in the mouth, the eyes inside the socket, the cheekbones beneath your skin. Your whole body in your awareness. A feeling of just being. And moving on to the breath and allowing our focus to be just with the breath now, and that anchoring that the breath can give us. Noticing that the body's breathing for you, that you can just observe that happening. And to help us create that space, we'll use a labeling. So when we breathe in, we'll label it rising. When we breathe out, falling. We're not trying to regulate the breath or control it, even if the mind does momentarily try to control it. Just let the breath come and go, and just label it exactly as it happens. Maybe there is a rhythm, maybe there isn't. Just labeling what's there. Rising, falling. And we'll let go of that focus on the breath. And now we'll just allow anything to come into our awareness. And perhaps that's sensations in the body. We'll label it sensation. 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 Or maybe there's a sound that becomes the most prominent. And we just label it hearing. 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 And then there's thoughts. So if you find yourself thinking or with a train of thoughts, or you suddenly realise that you've been carried away completely, just notice and label it thinking. 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 Just labeling that raw experience of what you're doing in that moment, what's happening, what's coming up. So it's either hearing, sensation, or thinking. And we don't need to label every experience or even know every experience. It's just whatever is the most obvious in your attention at any moment. And perhaps sometimes there won't be anything to label, and then something will rise up. So we're not looking for something to label. We're allowing something to be there to label. Sensation, hearing, thinking. No judgment or effort. Creating that space between you and the things that are happening. And we'll take a moment now to keep labeling in our head, in our silence, before I guide you back. Coming back to the breath now and beginning to label again that rising and falling, that anchoring keeping us connected to that stillness. Rising, falling. The body's breathing for you. And beginning to allow the breath to deepen now without labelling, just noticing that as you come back into your body and into the room, the breath would naturally just gently deepen. Taking 3 bigger than usual breaths. And then letting the breath return to its natural rhythm. Returning movement to the fingers and the toes. Perhaps they're cold like mine are, sitting outside. And then whenever you're ready, just gently blinking open the eyes. And just noticing that the room's really appeared. And just notice 3 things in the room right now, or the place that you're in. Just noticing 3 things. And then notice your hands in your lap. Notice your feet on the floor. And notice how we can always choose where to put our attention. And that labelling technique that we used is something that you can use in your day-to-day life as well. So if you find yourself with intrusive thoughts, particularly ones that are critical of yourself, you can use that labelling. It's just thinking. So without getting into a dialogue with yourself and disputing it, you can just label it thinking. Thinking. I hope that helps. And I hope you have a great evening. And I am going to go and keep an eye on this bonfire. Have a great night. I'll be back tomorrow at 5:15 p.m. And please do invite friends into the group if you think there's anyone out there who would benefit from having this moment to come together. Take care. Have a great night.